UK talking to anybody that flies for a hobby about flight safety and about, we have a good old discussion about things that we do wrong, things that we might do better. I learn a lot from it, and that's the first thing to say, by the way. This is not some POM coming to tell you all about how if you flew like me, you'd all be perfect. I'm definitely not a perfect pilot, never will be. And actually tonight is as much about, I want you to talk to me as well as me talk to you. So you've all got some experience out there, I'm quite sure. Incidentally, apart from Roger, because I know Roger's got hundreds of thousands of hours, has anybody in the room got more than 10,000 hours? Okay, has anybody in the room got more than 5,000 hours? More than 4,000? More than 3,000? More than 2,000? Who's got more than 1,000 hours in the room? No? Okay, there's a couple of you. How many hours have you got, sir?
About 12. Airplanes and gliders, 15.
Right, okay, so gliders as well. Bob, how many have you got now?
12 and a half.
12 and a half, so that's sort of what, 12,500?
No, 100.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty good. Who's got less than 100 hours in the room? Quite a few. Who's got less than 50? Less than 40? Keep your hands up. Less than 30? Less than 20? Ooh, less than 10? How many have you got, sir?
About 6.
About 6?
Yeah. Wow,
this is pretty good. Out of interest, Roger, how many have you got at the moment? Do you know?
About 13,000.
13,000. So we've got 13,000 hours in the corner versus 6, which is a pretty big spread. The biggest I've ever had in the room was 28,000 hours versus 20 minutes. one tiff, and that was it. So and the other guy, I've learned everything that there was to fly. I think helicopters, gliders, military jets, you name it. The point is, it doesn't really matter how many hours we've got, and that's the first thing to say tonight. Is it doesn't matter whether you're very experienced, like Roger is, or not very experienced, like you are, sir. It doesn't matter. We've all got in a room together. We all think flight safety is important. All the stuff that we're going to talk through tonight is stuff we can do no matter how many hours are in the logbook or what we fly. Does anybody not fly single engine piston fixed wing aeroplanes or multi ones? Does anybody fly something else? Any helicopter pilots in the room? Any balloonists? No? Gyrocopter pilots? There's lots of different. Very, very often the people I speak to, there's a whole raft of different flying machines that they fly. A lot of the stuff in here, there's all kinds of stuff in here tonight, paragliders, helicopters, you name it, and it doesn't really matter what we fly, we can get something from just about anything that gets airborne. We'll learn something from all of these people who've made errors tonight, and so it's quite well worth having a go at something other than the flying machine you normally fly. Helicopter next door, probably don't go and do that. I had a helicopter lesson last summer and I've thought of little else other than how can I fly helicopters now. Very, very addictive. As somebody described it to me last week as the crack cocaine of aviation. It's really true. Yeah, don't go near helicopters. Very, very expensive addiction that could become, I think. So lots of different things in here tonight to think about, hopefully get you thinking, get you talking to me as well. The more war stories I get, particularly because I don't know Australian flying particularly well. I've done a little bit, but not a lot. So the more you can tell me about what goes on here, the better it'll be as well. And let's see where we end up. So for the next, I don't know, hour and 20 minutes-ish, I'd like you to think about what you fly. And what you do well, what you don't do so well. Think about those times when the heat's come on a little bit and you've gone, I wish I hadn't done that. Or I wish I had done whatever it is that you hadn't done at the time. So think about what you fly tonight. Because I can't come and fly your aeroplanes, you can't come and fly mine. We've got to do this for ourselves, all of this stuff. So think about your own flying just for the next little while. The stuff I'm going to talk to you about is not random. The stuff I'm going to talk to you about is the stuff that kills general aviation pilots and hurts general aviation pilots in the UK, but actually, funnily enough, pretty much the same in Australia, pretty much the same in the rest of Europe, pretty much the same in America. We all seem to have the same kind of accidents as general aviation pilots, regardless of where we fly. There are some things that are different, so the weather's a little bit worse in the UK, we have slightly more complex airspace, but we don't have any deserts, we don't have any massive distances. We don't have some of the stuff that you have here. So different stuff, but we seem to come to grief in the same way. That pie chart up there is UK stats. If you want to see what the Australian stats are, now as I say they are pretty similar, just do a Google search for ATSB occurrence statistics and you'll find there's an ATSB report. It's really, it breaks it down way better than anything we have in the UK. Gives you a really good insight as to how people get hurt and die in small aeroplanes in this country. And as I say, please talk to me. Fire questions anytime you like, discussion points. I'm going to ask you some things as well, particularly if you're sitting in the front. No, I'm joking. So do talk to me as well. This is what we're going to talk about mainly, these three areas. So I'm going to start off talking about us, because we're the most common point of failure in an aeroplane, believe it or not. Yeah, engines fail, and things fall off sometimes, but actually much more common is that we make a mistake as human beings. So I'm going to show you some of the things that we need to think about as humans to begin with. We'll talk a little bit about conflict, so a little bit about mid-air collision. We're going to talk a little bit about airspace infringements and that kind of thing too. And then we're going to talk in the second half a little bit about loss of control, because that actually kills more people than any other single cause. If you lose control of your aeroplane, more likely to die than for any other reason. So the reason the 6 is in there, it's a UK thing. They have a thing called the Safety 6, which are the 6 most likely things to kill you as a GA pilot there. And this is the UK slide. So, but we've broken them down into 3 more general areas. So, enough from me just for a second. I'm going to show you a video now. It's a helicopter, but I bet you about halfway through this video you'll know exactly what's going to happen. So, did everybody guess right? Yeah. I heard a kind of in the room as soon as you saw all the power lines there. So you had a wire strike. So not an uncommon thing in this country, according to the stats. People do it very often here. Why did that happen?
Unfamiliar with the landing area?
Could well have been unfamiliar with the landing area. Yeah, it doesn't look like an airfield particularly. So yeah, may just not known much about where he was going to land. So that's one possibility.
He paid to have somebody directing them from the ground.
Yeah.
No.
Did he see the guy about a quarter of the way in doing this, who might have been swatting a fly, or more likely was telling the guy, don't land over here where he thought he was going to land, go over there. Last minute change of plan. You know, something now you might have prepared for landing there, you might not have prepared for landing over there. So suddenly there's a little alarm bell that might be tinkling. I don't know who that guy was. Maybe he was the chief pilot of the helicopter company. Maybe he's just some bloke who thought, oh, go over there, it's noisy here. I don't know. You don't know who they are, so you've got to think about, if you're in charge of this aeroplane, are you going to do as you're told, or are you not going to do as you're told? You need to think about that sometime. Anything else in there? If I tell you all the reason all the cars were there is this is a wedding reception. And in the back of this helicopter is the bride and groom. So have a think about the pressure. You know, it might be that this is a professional helicopter pilot, this is a charter, or it might be just, you know, he's a friend of the bride and groom and he said, oh, well, I'll get you to the wedding reception in spectacular style. But either way, a little bit of pressure there, isn't there? It's not much of a wedding reception if the bride and groom don't arrive, which they nearly didn't. There's a few things to think about there. So human factors, a bit of pressure, unprepared, last minute change of plan, all those kind of things. Maybe the chap just didn't see the wires. You know, he might have known they were there, might have forgotten. You know, they are quite hard to see, aren't they, really, until you hit them. Luckily for him, managed to get away with that one. Well, not quite. The helicopter needed 2 new rotor blades, it caused quite a bit of damage. But
There's a set of power lines just on the end of runway 18 here, which when we're doing practice force landings, we need to be quite conscious of too.
Yeah,
And
they are
very hard to see.
As I say, in particular, it's probably slightly less common in the UK that we have those. They are around, but for airfields like this, it typically wouldn't necessarily be those kind of power lines nearby. But you know, it is a common accident in Australia to hit wires, whether you're fixed wing or rotary wing. So the other thing, though, to say is, did the pilot mean to do that? No. And this is the point really that I want you to remember all the way through tonight, actually, is none of us mean, well, I'll just go and have an accident today, that'd be good. None of us mean to go and have an accident, we just kind of, it ends up happening to some of us, unfortunately. So it's thinking about really, it's all very easy for us. We all spotted it straight away sitting in here, didn't we? We all went, oh yeah, the power lines, I know what's going to happen now. Wouldn't it be lovely if we could think about it like that every time we went flying? Go, now, what do I need to think about here up ahead of time, you know, like the power lines, so that I don't end up being that person? Because we don't mean to have the accident, but actually we can, you know, lessen our chances maybe with a little bit of forethought sometimes too. This is the kind of thing, I mean, situational awareness, you heard about this? Yeah? Good. It's creeping a little bit more into PPL training in the UK, and maybe it's been here a bit longer already. In case you don't know what we mean, it's a little bit about that. So know what's going on around you, understand what that means. So if somebody says, I'm late downwind, then you know what that means, and you understand what that means to you. And why do we need to know and understand it? Because we need to judge things. We need to decide what we are going to do with our aircraft next, or what we need to think about next. Make those judgments, because it's this thing really, the effective judgment making, that's what's going to keep us safe more than anything else. Something like 80% of fatal accidents have got a judgment error of some sort as a root cause. Yeah. Non-fatal accidents, funnily enough, most of them are about just a lack of a skill of some sort. You know, you've had bad landing, or you know, you haven't quite sorted the crosswind out properly. But fatal accidents, nearly always some kind of judgment call that was badly made. Pressed on into bad weather, didn't do a weight balance, overloaded the airplane, which led to, you know, there's lots of other things that happen thereafter, but fundamentally judgment error very often is the cause, which is why we're talking about that bit. And we know that anyway. Distractions, interruptions, preoccupations, we'll see lots of those tonight. Once they get a foothold, that's where your situational awareness is under threat. Problem is, though, that we're all human beings, and we can try really hard to do all that kind of stuff, but we're limited as humans. There are some things that we just don't do very well. I'm going to demonstrate this now. This was a BBC documentary originally about various psychological things. It's a magic trick that's being done on the street. There's a couple of things that change as the magic trick carries on. See if you can spot what happens in the background.
Hi, I'm Magic Sting, and today we're in Portobello Road, and I'm going to show you guys a classic in magic, using matches. And today to help me out is Mark. Mark, tell you what, place your hand up for me nice and flat. Now I promise this won't hurt, alright? So here's the idea, let's just line this up. And if we close onto that nice and tight, here we go, watch this.
Keep watching.
I don't know if you felt that or not. I'll tell you what, have a look inside. Open it up. See how the match is actually returned into the book, and it's still burnt. Okay, you're not impressed. Alright, it was my first trick ever. But here's the idea. Just place that back in your hand, close it tight, and turn it face down again if you can. Now we're going to use one more thing, and we're going to use a magician's best friend, playing cards. Now the idea is really simple. You're going to choose one, so take anyone you like. Perfect. Have a look for yourself. And do me a favour, show the camera as well if you can. Brilliant. And you know what? Place it back face up on the deck. Now, it doesn't matter if I see what the card is, because we're going to do something completely different. Just watch this. Here we go. Follow it slowly. Watch the king. I don't know if you felt that or not. Tell you what, have a look inside. Open it up. Check it out.
See, King of Diamonds on card.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Did you watch the trick closely? This is a famous illusion called inattention blindness. This illusion is not about the magic. While watching the routine, you may or may not have noticed the changes taking place. The question is, how many changes did you see? The answer is there were 3 changes. The first change was the red hanky to a green one. The second was his shirt swapping to a t-shirt. The last was his assistant becoming a completely different person. How many did you see? So why is it that you didn't see these big changes? And the reason is that the brain receives so much information on its eyes that you can't see everything simultaneously. So instead it picks and chooses according to what it thinks is important. If you change something that it doesn't think is important, you just literally don't see it.
So, did everybody spot that the assistant changed to be a completely different person? No, didn't think so. Because we're all human and it's this thing about if you're not expecting to see something, you probably won't see it. And that's one of the problems that we have as pilots, whether it's doing a walk-around inspection before we go flying, or I remember there was a road safety campaign in the UK which was about motorcycles, and the slogan was "Think Bike." You know, so you've got to think about there might be a motorcycle there, and this was partly to do with inattention blindness, because if you're not expecting to see a motorbike, you're not looking for a motorbike, you may literally not see it. So it was all there, you know, the information was going, the light was falling on our eyes, but our brain decided that it wasn't particularly important that the assistant was somebody different, because we were all focused on the magic. So it's the same thing. If you think about when you do a walk round of your aeroplane next time, try and go out there thinking, oh, this is going to be an absolute heap, and loads of things are going to be wrong with it, and it might just make you look up a little bit harder and find that little subtle thing that might cause you a problem otherwise. So what we're trying to do really all the time is we're trying to manage the threats to us. Have you heard of threat and error management? Yeah, good. I know it's in the syllabus in Australia. It's just come into the syllabus in the UK. So there's a threat, something that happens to us that we need to think about. So things like weather, equipment failures, complex airports like Moorabbin or something like that, wake turbulence, we'll talk a little bit about later on, airspace changes, those kind of things that are going to happen to us. We need to think about them to make this flight safe. Of course, we can make a mistake as well. So we need to think about what we do as people as well, as pilots, the decisions we make, things we do or don't do, and how we're going to manage to make sure we do all of them. Things like forgetting to apply carb heat, forgetting how much fuel we got in the tank, making weight performance errors, all those kind of things. People have done all of this stuff. How do we stop ourselves? How do we make sure we see those power lines, those kind of things? We need to manage those threats and those errors. We don't manage them, that's where the accident creeps in potentially. So I've just shown you how rubbish you all are at seeing things that you're not expecting to see. Here's another opportunity then to be better. This is a paraglider this time that's going flying. Pilot's missed something on his pre-flight inspection. See if you can spot what it is. Right, should be able to see it just about now. Definitely see it now. Can you see it? Yeah, you can't. There it is. Got to sort the selfie stick out. Right, so there it is. This is later on in the flight now. Still undone. We're doing some high G spiral dives now, by the way. That wasn't where the flight ended, that was just where I stopped the video, by the way. Everybody knows what the guy missed there. Yeah, so that was a carabiner that was open and it should have been shut. Does anybody work with carabiners in a professional capacity? Do you know how much less load
About 10%.
Yes.
Open strength to close strength.
So about 10% of its strength when it's open like that compared with when it's locked shut like it's supposed to be. So that is a seriously weakened carabiner. You imagine also, this is holding the whole right-hand half of your aeroplane together, by the way. So you just go over a little bump or a little bit of negative G or anything like that, if that pops out of that hook, canopy collapses, end of flight, whether you like it or not. So the other thing to say is, where was that carabiner in relation to the pilot?
Where
Yeah.
About like pretty much right in front of his face. Why did he not see it?
Distracted.
Could have been distracted. Flying with a pretty girl in front, maybe. Don't know. Distracted by the selfie stick, definitely, wasn't he? Any other reason he might have missed it?
Wasn't looking for it.
Wasn't looking for it. We just learnt that lesson, haven't we? Yeah. What happens if that was, and this is one for the instructors, what happens if that was his 10th flight of the day? Yeah, do you do as good a walk round on your first flight of the day as you do on the 10th flight of the day? When you're a bit tired and you go, I can see the aeroplane there. Why don't you just come in here, drink a water, debrief, rebrief, back out there? What can possibly have happened to the aeroplane in that time? Fine, just climb in and go. The stupid will have done it. Or, those kind of things. So all of those things are all human factors. We could have spotted it, but we just got to work really hard as people to try and get those factors. By the way, all the people in all of the videos tonight get away with this. And it's quite remarkable how somebody can get away with it, to be honest. But thank goodness. It's just trying to put yourself in those people's shoes. So there's a little bit about us as humans. Let's think about another area then. Let's think about conflict. So coming together with others. Either in terms of mid-air collisions, but in the first instance we're going to talk a little bit about control flight into terrain, CFIT. So you've got a few hills around here. I was quite surprised. I had a look at the stats, and I was surprised how many Australian pilots hit terrain. There are quite a few who hit wires, we've already seen that, but there are quite a lot who fly into hills too, even though there are quite large parts of the country that don't really have many hills, but we still seem to manage to do it almost as often as we do in the UK. Why do you think people fly into hills?
Maybe a VFR pilot flying into IMC.
Yeah, that's a really common way that people do it. They get into poor weather and they just lower and lower cloud base, they get way of the ground. Yeah. Other reasons?
Loss of power,
Is what, sorry?
Loss of power?
Possibly, and that usually then might lead to a loss of control. There's a possible reason.
Disorientation because of glare?
Yeah, so get disorientated for some reason. Disorientated because they end up in cloud, disorientated because they just don't know where they are and they get distracted by something and then they thought they were further away from the hill than they actually were. The weather can play a part, sucking you onto the top of a hill. Strong wind, like today for instance. There's various reasons that people do it. These are the kind of the reasons really. You get distracted by something else, increased workload, the height keeping goes awry a little bit. You get distracted by something, you just didn't realise the hill was as high as it was. And that's happened to somebody I know before. You think you can get over it, and you can't, because you're only in a Jabiru. Or it's a really hot day and you're in a Warrior and it's heavy and you can't outclimb the sinking air. Or you just forgot the hill was there. And I know somebody who's done that and not lived to tell the tale as well, believe it or not. How do you avoid flying into terrain? This is not a trick question. Stay in the middle of the sky, don't go near the edges. It's a simple. You can't have a control flight into terrain at 29,080 feet, because even Mount Everest is less than that. Yeah? So just everybody fly above that, you'll be fine. No, joking apart though, this is why we have lowest safe altitude. Yeah? Now, for a lot of people, it doesn't really matter, because you're not flying at night and you're not flying in instruments. But I would like you and me as well as daytime VFR pilots, have a think about not a lowest safe altitude, because that's got some fairly strict definitions as to how to make one of those up. But think of a minimum altitude that you can make for yourself. How would we do that? Because if we're above that level, we can't hit the terrain. So we might have lots of other things that are going to cause us a problem. CFIT is not going to be one of them, guaranteed. Stay in the middle of the sky. Here's the way of doing it. So here's a map of the local area, what I made earlier. I call this the sausage method, and I thought it was kind of appropriate for Australia. I've got two sausages in the presentation, this is the first one. So examine a sausage around your track. So you've got a track going from Lilydale to wherever. Have a look either side of the track, have a look at either end of the track, sausage type of shape, and have a look at what's in there in terms of things that you might hit. Just to say, and that's how the lowest safe altitude thing works as well, by the way. Find the highest feature in it. So I have looked at my sausage around this leg here, and I found Mount, is it Begary or Begary or however you would say it down here? I'd say Begary probably. It says 1618, so 1618 feet above sea level. We all agree? Okay. So I found the highest feature. Now, it is terrain that I found. It's a mountain. Why would I add 360 feet randomly to it?
For obstacles.
Yes, definitely for aerials, obstacles, but why would I add 360 feet to that?
It has to be marked as it's on
There you go, dead on. Do you know that anything under, you could have a 359-foot aerial on the top of that and it wouldn't be on the map? Just say 1618 and there might be another 359 feet of something on the top of that, wouldn't be marked on the map. Don't believe me, that big fat map out there in the main room, that says that on there. In the UK it's 300 feet, so slightly less, but I guess things are generally bigger here. So 360 feet of terrain, so I better add another 360 feet to take account of that possible uncharted obstacle on top of that mountain, so that would give me, what, about 1980 feet-ish, something like that. And then, if I flew at 1980 feet, I would probably just graze the top of that area, so I'm going to add a little bit more than that. So have a personal margin. You can decide what that is, because this is not low safe altitude, which is more defined, that's 1,000 feet. That's not a bad personal margin to have. In the UK, I tend to use 500 feet, because usually above me there's more controlled airspace and things that I can't get into. 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 800 feet, you decide how far you want to miss that thing by, and add that on top of it as well. So 1980 plus my, let's say 1,000 feet, that makes it 2,980 feet now. So let's say, 3,000 feet for round numbers, or if I wanted just a 500 foot gap, 2,500 feet. That doesn't matter, but I'll come up with what my minimum altitude is. And then I know that on that leg, if I said it was a minimum of 3,000 feet, if I go below 3,000 feet, well, it doesn't matter, does it? Because it's good VFR, I can see the mountain, I can see the mast on top of it if I need to. But the point is that if things start to go a little bit awry, I'm not quite so sure of my position, the weather starts to close in a bit, for some reason, I can get rid of that CFIT risk by just climbing above the 3,000 feet. Yeah, it might have lots of other issues, might be in cloud even, but I'm not going to hit a hill, that is for sure, because I've decided on that leg that that's my minimum altitude. So there's the thing to think about, how not to hit hills. This comes from AFPLAN, this map. Anybody use AFPLAN in here? Yeah, it's pretty good. Any kind of electronic aids for flying with these Oz runways or your Garmin in the aircraft or whatever. Think about how you set your electronic aids as well. So AFPLAN, for instance, gives you a lowest safe altitude, all calculated like you're supposed to, and it's a good guide. It might be a little bit more conservative than the sausage method that I've talked about here, but it gives you a good guide. But you've got to set it up properly. So you've got to actually put the route in that you're going to fly. It's no use drawing that line and then going somewhere over here, because it's not the plan that you put in. So rubbish in, rubbish out with these things. So think about electronic aids with that as well.
But I don't think it does that on the cheaper versions.
It doesn't? Right, okay. I've obviously got the very expensive version. So yeah, well there's a good point for a start, so even depending on which version you've got, whether you've got the capability or not. A lot of people in the UK who've flown into hills have done so because of the direct to function. Dead easy to use, really dead easy to use. Off we go. Yeah, but the direct to function is exactly what it says on the tin. It will take me from here to there across whatever is in the middle. It could be controlled airspace, hills, you name it. So a lot of people come across it that way, and it's those last minute changes in plans like, oh, where do they want me to go? Oh, direct to. That's where you're off. You are that helicopter pilot who's suddenly being told. So, sausage method. Controlled flight into terrain. What else can we do about controlled flight into terrain? Well, think about things before you go flying. Think about the weather. Think about what the minimum altitude is. Think about how that relates to the cloud base that you're going to fly in. What's the weather generally doing? What route am I going to fly? All of those things you can think about up front before you get in the aeroplane. Once you're in the aeroplane, don't let yourself get distracted. Don't let that height loss go beyond what you're comfortable with. Don't get too long in your head down reading your map or programming your iPad. So manage that distraction consciously. And then if you set a minimum altitude, stick with it. Don't go, well, I know I calculate 2,500 feet. I'm going to say it's 2,000 now that I'm in the aeroplane. So if you set a limit, stick with it. as well as general rule. You can use that minimum altitude as part of the other bits of your pre-flight planning as well. Not maybe such a consideration in Australia as it is in the UK, lucky you, because you've got better weather and higher cloud bases generally here than I have. My typical cloud base at home is about 1,300 feet. The sky always seems much bigger when I come down here. Even a rubbish day is probably like 3,000 foot cloud base, isn't it? So, but the same thing goes in the UK as it does here. Don't just rely on the TAFs and the METARs. A lot of people do. They'll take the weather at Tullamarine, the weather at Moorabbin, or the weather at wherever you can get a TAF or a METAR from, and they'll make their go-no-go decision based just on that. But remember, TAFs and METARs are quite localised spots of weather. And weather can change quite quickly in this part of the world. So that's the small picture stuff. That's useful, it's really important. Don't forget about the big picture stuff as well, though, either with an area forecast or what was that one that you were showing me for, general forecast? General forecast that you can get from NAPES and those kind of places. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, ask your instructors, they'll tell you all about it. Little details in this as well. The cloud on this chart, this is an area forecast here, same for the general forecast as well. The cloud there is above mean sea level, whereas on a TAF and a METAR, because it's more to do with when do you get out of the cloud for an instrument approach, cloud there is above ground level. So you could look at this and go, well, it's a 1,200 foot cloud base, that's not too bad, but then if the place where you're going is 500 foot above sea level, that's actually only 500 foot above where you're going to land. So these little details are important too. And of course, that minimum altitude, sausage method, we can just, if we came up with 3,000 feet and the cloud base was 5,000 feet, well, we've got a good couple of thousand feet to be clear of cloud. We've got quite a big gap to fly in that's, below us, no terrain risk, above us, quite a way to the cloud. However, if we got 3,000 feet as our minimum altitude from our sausage method and the cloud base was at 3,000 feet, well, we're in the bottoms of the cloud, aren't we? Or we have to go lower, which we can if we're VFR, but we've now potentially got a CFIT risk. Might be quite happy to accept that, but at least we know about it. So have a think about minimum altitude in those terms as well. By the way, if you read all the way to the bottom of this thing, it says there, if the forecast is not clear, call that number. Don't know if you've ever done it here. You may not need to. I've done it, there's the same feature on the ones in the UK, and I've done it a couple of times, and it's really, really useful sometimes. They can just give you a little bit of either more up-to-date information or more specific information. I was asking about snow, like when it gets cold. Probably. Anyway, I was asking about snow, and the forecaster was able to tell me how fast it was moving, how much there would be, whether it would lie or not, and all this kind of stuff, which is pretty important because the airport I was proposing to take off from didn't have any snow clearing equipment. So, and I was going away doing a flight test on a 737 and then coming back into that same airport, except I wouldn't have been if the snow had been lying. So those little nuggets of information from the forecasters at the bottom, they might be quite useful. So think about ringing the number if you need clarification too. So, talked a little bit about CFIT. Let's think about other ways that we can get into conflict, not necessarily with the ground, but with other people around us. We'll see a little bit more about mid-air collision after the break, but just have a think about airspace and who else is around about you. In this part of the world, there's some fairly busy places down over there, with Essendon and Moorabbin and places like that. I found this map online. Again, it's quite difficult to see stuff, and we'll see this in the second half as well. I'll prove how rubbish your visual system is. Lookout is not great. The Australian ATSB did a really, really good study on just how rubbish lookout as a sole means of avoiding each other is. It's all we've got very often as VFR pilots, but it's not very good. So we need other things as well to try and give us the best chance of not hitting somebody else when we're flying along. One of the ways we can do this is try and avoid the hot spots or the choke points, or again, at least be aware of where they are. Where would you say would be a choke point on this map?
Approach points from major airports, the VFR reporting points coming in.
Yeah. So that obviously everybody's heading towards, I don't know, the Brighton Beach, or is it Carram's?
Carram,
Yeah, Carram's another good one. Ricketts Point there maybe people go to the same landmarks or the same VFR reporting points.
And tie-up on Sunday.
Time on Sunday, honeypot. It's a honeypot, isn't it? Yeah.
The worst one is Point Ormond. That's a drop zone.
Right. So and there's lots of nods around the room, so we all know where these honeypots are. So that's the time not to be looking at the map. That's the time to be eyes on stalks, passengers all eyes on stalks, looking around for other people, because that's where you're going to see them. So there's the hot spots. We know where they are generally. Choke points, well, how about this line in here where you've got Essendon, Tullamarine, sort of that area up there, bit of controlled airspace that comes quite low, which also you might bump up against, which is forcing you south. And then you've got Point Cook and various other things around here, and people doing exciting things in aeroplanes there, that's forcing you north. So the result is that everybody ends up coming down this little choky bit here. Yeah, so it's quite a narrow part, and people going both directions down there. If there was going to be a mid-air collision between two small aeroplanes, I'd probably, if I was a betting man, say it might be somewhere over there. Yeah? And we can start to think about those things in our pre-flight planning. Put those goggles on when you look at your map and go, now, yeah, tie-ab on Sunday, if I'm not going to the air show, I might give that a bit of a wide berth between sort of, 8 and 10:30 when the airfield closes for the display, because everybody's going to be trying to get in there for the start of the day. And if I'm going past there at 3 o'clock, I'll probably still give it a wide berth because there's lots of high energy stuff going on. So you can already get rid of some of that risk at the planning stage is the message really. So have a think about where are the hot spots, where are the choke points. This is a major topic in the UK because we've got way more controlled airspace that's close to the average VFR pilot than you have here. You're quite lucky here, you probably don't feel it always, but believe me, you are. And we've got a major problem with airspace infringements, and it's probably, sadly, a matter of time before somebody in a small aircraft hits a jet airline, which is what we're all really worried about. So, yeah, much bigger topic in the UK than it is here, but still something to think about here too. So how can we avoid that kind of risk? Well, we can plan the flight, ideally beforehand, so that we can see where we're going to go, and we try and get rid of some of that risk already before we set off. That's a really good defence now. If you've got a transponder, definitely use it. If you've got an altitude mode, even better, because the person coming in the opposite direction might have a traffic collision avoidance system, like I do in the Boeing, and it'll tell me where you are. If you've got the altitude mode selected, it'll tell me where you are and how high you are, and more important, where you are relative to me. So if you get too close, it'll shout commands at me and tell me to climb or descend out of your way. So it can't do that if you haven't got your altitude mode set. So really, really important defence nowadays. And there are more and more light aircraft, Cirrus and things like that have got these systems in too. Have to concentrate on what you're doing. People get distracted, they go a little bit further right, a little bit further left than they decided they were going to originally, and that's where they get into the wrong part of the airspace, they get a little bit close to that hotspot that they're intending to. So we need to maintain our situational awareness. You guys in Australia are really good at using the radio, much better than we are in the UK as light aircraft pilots. It's much more regimented, therefore people get frightened of it. We haven't got the sort of CTAF area frequency setup that you have here. It's a much safer radio environment than it is in the UK. I changed that. That says use RT optimally. In the UK, that point said use the radio. Yeah, that's the difference. So that defence is pretty good already here. So just think about your radio work. Don't turn it down. Listen to what's going on. Look out with your ears as well as your eyes. Got to read the chart clearly and think about using in-flight aids. GPS is a great example if it's set up right. It can really help you. If you've not seen that before, I found that when I was doing my study for this presentation. The On Track website, is it Carl's that run it? Yeah, it is. That gives you a really good brief on some major airports. So it's got a really good brief on rapid but it gives you a clue as to where the hotspots and the choke points are if you're not sure. So that's a good example of some tools you can use.
Do you have VFR flight following in the UK?
Of a sort. It's not quite the same as here. It's provided usually by military controllers because there's a lot more military stuff going on around the UK generally. And there are various levels of it as well. But it's generally pretty good. It's probably a little bit more similar to here in that way. We don't have the the following and the sort of SAR time thing, because we don't need it. You can't really get lost in the UK, let's be honest. Certainly not going to be days or years till they find you anywhere in the UK, so we don't need to think about such things. But on the other hand, we are surrounded by water, so that is a bit more of a consideration. And the water gets up to the dizzy heights of about 13 degrees in the highest summer. So I definitely do not go swimming in the UK. So yes, there we are. So there's some things to do with that. We're nearly at the break, so you can have a chance to have a cup of coffee and a bit more of the nibbles next door. Before we go into the break, we talked a bit about distractions. You might have seen this video before. If you haven't, just be quiet, because the people who haven't seen it, it's a good surprise. And if you have seen it before, well, you'll like it again. But here's a well-handled distraction. He hasn't seen it yet. You watch him when he sees it.
We have snakes.
Yeah, I'd much rather have cats. Yeah, we've got spiders and everything. Yeah, another reason not to buy it. Yeah, so if we say what, 10 minutes, something like that, and let's gather again for the second half. Thanks for